Pam, when you're teaching composition, do you prefer to use nonfiction or fiction in the form of short stories, drama, poetry, etc.?
I prefer fiction, personally, because while I see value in both, I tend to think that to become a better writer, you need to be a good reader. The more you read, the better you can write. It seems to me that's the way it seems to work. And I think for whatever reason, to me, fiction seems richer, more to explore, more to identify with, more enticing for students to read, more interesting to them. Sometimes nonfiction can be, let's face it, sometimes very dry. Sometimes it's not the best written material. It depends on what it is you're choosing from. It's not always what students want to get into, although I may be wrong about that, because it seems like today's more modern students actually would probably prefer nonfiction over fiction to me. But for me, my experience has always been it works well with fiction. And I think that allows you to become more analytical. It gives you more to work with. It lets you explore all the literary devices and terms that we want students to know. And while, writing has to do with communication and being able to express an opinion and ideas, it also has to do with helping you think and think deeply and explore. To me, I've always told my students that literature is life, and so that's what we're exploring here by exploring fiction, to me.
And you believe perhaps fiction would be more engaging for students? Would
I have found that to be true for me in my experience. I've been teaching for 40 years, 33 were in public high school, 7 here at Tech, and until recently, I would have said unequivocally that fiction was the best way to go. But, students are changing, ideas are changing, mindsets are changing. Unfortunately, it seems that students don't really like to read anything, no matter what it is. So, that also is a problem for you. But to me, I just have always found that students react more with fiction.
There is an argument that students are more likely to encounter in their daily lives in the future as adults nonfiction, and they're more likely to write nonfiction in their working lives and in their overall lives, as I say. And the argument goes, I suppose, that in composition class we're educating students to be successful in their working lives and in their lives. So what do you think about that argument that nonfiction is more practically, I guess, beneficial?
I can see where people would think that, and I certainly know that students are going to be writing lots of nonfiction, but that doesn't mean we should deny them the opportunity to explore literature, because if they don't do it with us, then where are they most likely to do that? I think that the fiction adds to your life. It adds color, it adds joy, it adds joy, happiness, same thing, but to me it just adds to your life. It gives you more to think about and more to deal with. And yes, every day, and when you go into your real life, if you want to call it that, you may be writing nonfiction, and that's fine, but when will you ever get a chance to explore literature if you don't do it in school? I have a problem with this desire to demean or diminish literature, especially literature of the Western culture, especially British literature. It seems to me nobody wants to teach that anymore, and I really don't understand why that is, since I think that's part of what makes us who we are. Not to say that other literature is not important, because it is.
And these works are culturally significant, and perhaps students might not have an opportunity otherwise to encounter a Shakespeare play or poetry by Wordsworth or Coleridge. There used to be general agreement that there are certain things that an educated person should know. I don't know if we have that sort of agreement in society these days, but is that the cultural importance of these works that you're speaking?
That is to me.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think you need to explore what the basis of our country is, where our founding fathers, what they knew. And I recently saw a documentary about prisoners, and someone had come in to teach these prisoners Shakespeare. They had never really encountered or explored Shakespeare before, and they were completely fascinated. These were not well-educated men, these were not college graduates or anything like that, but they couldn't believe how much they actually got from that, how they related to those characters, what they learned from reading I think they were reading Hamlet and maybe Macbeth, and they were just fascinated by that, and they had never really been exposed to it, and they said that helped them to understand things about themselves that they'd never really thought about before. So to me, that's what literature can do for you.
Dealing with some fundamental issues of life in terms of Shakespeare, you know, if you think of Julius Caesar, maybe issues of justice and law and you know, the proper form of government and the role of leaders to the citizenry, right?
I agree.
Responsibility.
I agree with that. I know just from my own personal experience, I took some of my students who had not been able to meet standard on the exit exam out of high school, and we didn't even talk about Hamlet. I took them along with my advanced students and my honor students to see a portion of Hamlet presented at the Peace Center. They were fascinated. They were intrigued. They understood exactly what was going on despite the language, which we may think is a barrier to them, but once they saw it, they were just fascinated by that whole production and by the language and by what happened, and they thought that was just about the best thing they'd ever seen.
Thank you, Pam. Remind me of your last name, Pam.
Patterson.
Patterson. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.